Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black, everything.
Welcome to Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal, and we are joined today by Amir Mohamed el Khalifa, also known as Oddisee. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, man.
Thanks for joining us here at Left to Black.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the reason why you're visiting Duke.
Sure.
You're in visiting us for a couple of days, but you're also here as part of an initiative, Muslims in America.
Sure.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The initiative, I think, decided to bring me down based on my music, obviously, and my unique experiences, and more so my upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, it's an organization that's attempting to bridge cultures and create dialogue and understanding. And I'm definitely a product of those two cultures that are they're doing their best to bring together, and that is the East and the West.
Your father was Sudanese?
Yes.
Yeah, or is Sudanese?
Yeah, my father is Sudanese.
African-American mother, but you were raised by Sudanese parents.
Yes, that's true.
And Prince George's County.
PG County, that's right, yeah.
Talk a little bit about what that experience was. I mean, because it's, you know, there are a lot of things going on there, right? We're talking about the African-American piece versus the African piece, you know, which has been a long conversation in our communities. But we're also talking about the religious piece, particularly at a moment where there's a heightened sensitivity around Muslim identity. Were you aware of any of that when you were growing up?
I was made to feel aware of it, absolutely. You know, I started to see fundamental differences between my parents. I would be with my mother on weekends and my father during the week. So I was at a mosque and then dropped off on Friday nights to my mother's. And I was in a church on Sunday morning before being dropped off to my dad for school on Monday. So I was very, very aware of it at a very young age. I also didn't necessarily fit into any particular group growing up, or even though I felt like I was both groups made distinctions about me. So to my Sudanese side, I was the American kid. To my American side, I was a foreigner, born and raised in the D.C. area, born in Washington, D.C. My family would consider me a foreigner, you know, based on, in all honesty, privilege and opportunities being different.
Yeah.
You know, they would associate that privilege with my father, therefore associate me with just being Sudanese. So, yeah, I was very aware of it as a kid.
Yeah. What was that moment that kind of brought you to hip hop?
Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders.
Good choice.
was when I said, I don't want to just listen to this anymore, I want to be a part of it.
Yeah, what was it about Midnight Marauders?
I don't know then. Well, I know subconsciously what it was, and now I'm old enough to articulate what it was. I heard myself in it. I heard suburban hip hop artists rapping with a diversity in their lyrics that wasn't about the same thing, that I didn't have a connection to. I lived around and I saw. My mother's family is from Southeast Washington, D.C., and it's from Southwest, if you know the area. And that was my weekends, but it wasn't my life. And when Tribe came out, I heard myself in the music. And I didn't know that at the time. It wasn't until later when I listened to it, it was like, okay, I think that's why I gravitated towards that, you know. So
let me tell you my fanboy moment.
Okay.
My fanboy moment is 2008, The Upgrade. You and J Live and Pasta News. That is like amongst like my top 10 favorite hip hop songs of all time. One, because I had, J Live was a student at the University of Albany, and he had just graduated when I started teaching there. So everybody was talking about, oh, you studied hip hop, this and that. What about J Live, right? Right. So I have been following his career, and I remember when he dropped that album, I was like, I really like this track, but I don't know who this Oddisee cat is.
Yeah.
Talk about what was it like to get started and on the one hand be with someone in terms of J Live who had such a great underground presence and reputation as an independent artist, but then you're also with like this dude from De La Soul.
Sure.
What was it like when you first hopped on with these two?
Oh, it was a crazy experience, man. So, Pos is from De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest. And then you have J Live, who at this time was what they were at that moment. And then there's little old me. And to be on a track with artists that are responsible for your existence, their lane that they created is my current lane. Counterculture, indie, conscious, musically oriented, poetry over rhythm. was paved by De La Soul and Tribe Called Quest and the native tongues, etc. So to be on a track for someone responsible for your existence is in itself just crazy. But that was a moment for me in trying to prove myself. I produced that track as well. And it was around this time, a lot of people don't know this, J Live was the first person to take me on tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he did a tour on the West Coast with a group called the Living Legends. It was a massive tour. And these guys were huge on the West. And I said, I really want to go on tour. I really want to go on tour. He says, all right, you can come on tour. You can work my merch table. And J Live, the first time I saw the American West was behind a merch table. And whenever there was time, he would let me jump on stage and rap. And that song for me was kind of like I finally ascended. I got some acknowledgement from my peers and my contemporaries and my role models. Yeah, so it's a big song for me.
Yeah. One of the things that's so striking about your music is, in fact, the music.
Oh, thank you.
The fact that you've dropped these instrumental mixtapes is kind of a testament to the fact that you're as attentive to that part of the game as are the lyrics. What was some of the stuff you were listening to when you were growing up, right? Because there's a kind of soulfulness about your music. Like I think about some of the stuff on Tangible, and where you're sampling Donny Hathaway and you're sampling Les McCann. So you clearly were listening to some of that, that kind of late 60s, early 70s soulful stuff. But what else were you listening to?
Sure. I actually didn't discover a lot of that music until I started digging specifically for samples. It wasn't until I was digging for samples that I discovered the music that I gravitated towards sampling. Growing up in the house, my father was listening to a lot of Black American music. This is before he remarried my stepmother, and he and I lived alone. Later, he became more into Sudanese music.
Okay.
I was listening to, he was playing Marvin, he was playing Bob Marley, he was playing a lot of Parliament. He was playing Bootsy, he was playing all kinds of stuff. My mother, Black American from Washington, D.C., didn't like a lot of that music. My mother was playing Carly Simon and Annie Lennox and Kenny Rogers. And it's crazy, seriously. Like, she didn't like a lot of the music, there's a lot of soul music. To this day, she doesn't. Who was her name? Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
My mother was listening to that type of stuff. So I grew up listening to that and listening to soul from my Sudanese father.
Gotcha.
But in the D.C. area where live music was everywhere. So I grew up around
go-go.
I grew up around a lot of go-go. A lot of go-go where I grew up at. So all of those things combined, and then fun fact, Garry Shider, the guitar player.
Funkadelic.
My next door neighbor. I grew up with his son, and that's the first place I played music in the studio. To answer your question quickly.
So like you were destined. right
I grew up next to Garry Shider. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that is crazy.
Yeah.
You're watching Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We're joined today by Oddisee, who is in residence here at Duke University. You have a song from Tangible Dreams, Yeezus is a Man.
Yeezus was a mortal man.
And Yeezus is a mortal man.
Yeah.
And it's not quite a shot at Watch the Throne.
Thank you for noticing that. Thank you.
I think it's so much more complicated than that. But Kanye and Jay get name checked,
Sure.
right, in a way that's interesting. And part of the critique I hear in the song is really talking about the way that we elevate some of the figures within hip hop, almost to a godlike status. And obviously by listening to your music, I can hear that you have an appreciation for Kanye, the music maker, and also to some extent, in terms of his cadences and things like that pop up in your own style. 5 years later, when you look at Kanye, and I can imagine that, there's not an African-American rapper that's not, a black rapper in the U.S. who's not getting the Kanye question all the time.
Yeah.
But 5 years later, as you're looking at who Kanye is, the artist, and who Kanye, the celebrity is, and some of the choices that he's made in that context, what are you thinking?
I separate Kanye the artist from Kanye the person. Oftentimes artists forget that we are public figures, and in some ways, public servants. We provide a service to people, and we forget that. And I don't. I tend to separate artists from them as a person, because I don't think that we should be looking towards every artist to have a view or an opinion on something, because they didn't go to school and get a degree in poli-sci. They make music, yet we always want to know what they think about the world. I think that that is most of the time inappropriate. These are not the people we need to be asking the questions anyway. So I don't hold in high regard their thoughts and views anyway.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way in which the mainstream media has enabled Kanye by consistently putting a mic in his face and highlighting every little thing that he says.
I'm a fan of his music, and I'm a fan to this day. But I believe that he does things for shock value. I believe that he is a shock value person who, when he needs to maintain relevancy, something like he says something outlandish. And the Kanye who said George Bush doesn't care about black people, and the Kanye who says I want to wear a MAGA hat, has always been the same Kanye.
The same Kanye, yeah.
You know, whatever works to get the attention is what he'll run with. And I just disregard it and pay no attention to it. I don't have any opinions on his antics.
What about what Kanye enables? When you think about the current U.S. president and things like a Muslim ban, you know, stuff that hits closer to home to you than it might for some Americans. You know, do you think that Kanye has a larger responsibility in that regard?
No. Kanye wouldn't have changed anything. If Kanye put the hat on or he didn't, it wouldn't have changed anything. It may change public perception, but it would have no impact on policy. And this is my humble opinion.
Yeah.
As a Sudanese American, as a Muslim, pre-Muslim ban, it's very difficult for people from Islamic countries on particular lists to enter the United States, and it has been for a very long time. It wasn't a Trump thing.
Yeah.
In fact, Trump is like an exfoliant that brings things to the surface that have always existed.
Yeah.
You know, and now is allowing us to discuss these things that people have always been living in.
I mean, there's a lot of ways in which we have talked about Trump in that way around just white supremacy in general, right? Stuff that's been laying under the surface, just bubbled up, you know, during these last 2 years.
Yeah, if Kanye had spoken out against the Muslim ban, it wouldn't have changed the Muslim ban. He doesn't have the power to do that. He does have the power to give more power to the people who've already had more power than him, but he doesn't have the power to change policy. And we were overzealous to think that his perception or his opinion could sway policy.
Yeah.
You know, judges can sway policy. A local judge can say, I'm going to overturn this in this law and, you know, going to make this.
A DA can decide to indict a police officer or not.
Right, right. These are the people who, you know, we don't want to ask them the questions because we're too preoccupied with entertainers and stardom and popularity. And we hold them in too high of a regard, and we think that they have the answers. This is how a reality TV star can be elected president. The same reason Kanye has a platform. It's part of the same vice.
Absolutely,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a little older than you, so I'd like to think of myself of a generation who thought that hip hop could save the world, right? or at least it could save black people.
Sure.
How do you feel about where hip hop is now, generally speaking? And its capacity really to do the kind of social justice work that we heard in Public Enemy music, that we heard even in NWA, right, and some of those other artists from that moment.
It's a long question. I'll do my best to keep it concise. Hip hop initially started off as music for entertainment.
Party and bullshit,
It was the party first. The deviation of hip hop is the social commentary aspect of it. The aspect of it that gets the title of being quote unquote real hip hop is actually the mutation and not the genuine article. And a lot of purists forget that. It was the party first and the commentary second. The commentary became popular at a time when it was needed. You can always kind of look at where society is and where hip hop is, and hip hop will tell you exactly where society is. The Obama era brought such a topical level of comfort and interior that black music reflected it, and the subject matter switched back to being more about money and entertainment and having a good time. And we're in that post-era now where we're still riding from that wave. During the recession, music was a lot darker. Rappers were a lot darker. A lot of the drill music and really aggressive Southern trap that was coming out was at the height of the recession.
Right. I mean, even Young Jeezy, right, is doing music that's connected to that moment.
Right.
Yeah.
So you start to see, like, whenever the economy is in a particular place, the music gets relaxed and comfortable and happy and party. And when it's not, it starts to reflect that again.
Yeah.
And it's cyclical. It just seems to happen all the time. So at that time, when we thought that hip hop would save the world, it was probably necessary in what we were going through. You know, it was Bush era.
Yeah.
You know, it was war on drugs.
Right.
It was 3 strikes.
Right.
You know, it was a lot of heaviness.
Yeah.
You know, it was Desert Storm, you know, and our music was a message to help us get through it. Within the Clinton era is what? Puffy era?
Puffy, right.
So you get
A
jiggy.
little bit more aspirational.
Yeah,
right.
more aspirational. Start getting
Right.
yachts and cars and
Right. You get Jay, right?
Right.
At least the first iteration of Jay. Yeah, yeah.
So hip hop is always right where it's supposed to be, is my point.
Yeah.
It's always right where it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
reflecting American culture. It's faster than American culture can define itself.
That's great.
There's always a song and rap that's already defined what's going on in society.
What are you reading these days?
I am reading Prisoners of Geography, the politics of geopolitics, and how geography shapes culture and culture shapes policy. That's what I'm reading right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So glad you came by to spend some time with us here on Left to Black.
Thank you for having me.
And even better for spending some time here with the students at Duke University.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm just appreciative that people have me down to hear what I have to say.
You've been watching Left to Black. I'm your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We've been joined by Washington, D.C.'s, Prince George's County's, Oddisee, who is in residence here at Duke University. Thank you again, man, for coming through.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Pleasure.
Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything, everything black. Culture over everything, y'all. We taking it back.